Hey everybody, there's a couple problems that we had on yesterday's online textbook that I wanted to go over. Good job to those of you that came to the open meet and asked questions when you were confused. That was awesome. Some of you, you're still not showing up, but you're not doing that great on some of these. I'd really like to see you come a little more to ask questions, and that way you should be getting hundreds on these because I'm there for you. Sorry, I guess there was a problem with writing the questions on the doc. I don't know why you're able to write questions on it one day but not yesterday. Hopefully we got that fixed. So the first question to go over was number 15. It says graph the inverse of the function by reflecting the graph in the line y equals x. So if you go back to the first video we did, the very first thing we talked about is finding the inverse of relations, and the way that we did that was we just switched the x and the y value. So the easiest way to do this would be just switch the x and the y value of the ordered pairs. So for this function f, it has the ordered pair 0, 3. So the new function, the inverse of it, would be 3, 0. So let's go 3, 0 and I'd put a line. And then if I find another point, say this point here is 2, 4, well the inverse of that would be 4, 2. There's another one. And you just draw a line through those 2 points, and that would give you your inverse line. Alright, so that's all you need to do for that one. The next problem I saw came on this. It said find the inverse of f of x equals 4x minus 1. So to find the inverse, you added 1 and then divided by 4, so you get this. You could also call this 1/4 x plus 1/4. So g of x equals that. So that's how you find the inverse. Now I'd imagine the problem comes from graphing. So I believe you're supposed to graph the function and its inverse. So to graph this function, that's not so bad, right? You start at -1. You go up 4, right 1, and then you draw a line through that. I think everybody probably was fine with that part. The part that you probably had a tough time with was graphing the inverse, since it was 1/4 x plus 1/4, and they didn't let you start at 1/4 at the y-intercept there. So that could cause a problem, unless you remember what we did on the very first problem here. To graph the inverse, you just switch the x and the y values of the original. So if you have 0, -1, you just go to -1, 0. If I have 1, 3, I just go to 3, 1. That's the inverse graph. So that would be the easiest way to do it. There's other ways to do it, but that would be the easiest way right there. You just switch the x and the y values. So I believe we have something similar going on probably for this one. I'll graph -2x plus 5. I'll graph the original here. Go down to right 1. Do that a few times. Draw my line to the point. And to find the inverse, you'd subtract 5, then you divide by -2, so you get 5 minus x over 2, or -1/2 x plus 2.5, or anything like that. And again, I'd imagine that the problem came from graphing here, because people probably said, well, I can't start my graph at 2.5, so how am I supposed to put my y-intercept in? Well, again, you just look at your points. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so I'll go to 5, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And since I have 1, 3, I'll then just go to 3, 1. And then that would be my graph. Since it was on the computer, you just needed 2 points, and then it would graph your line for you. I think this problem is the same. I think that's kind of how it was going for most people, and you can graph it just like that. So I'm not going to do all of these, and if you want to see it, feel free to come to an open meet. There was this one that I want to talk about. I supplied the answer here because the answer for the graph is actually wrong. Somebody came on the Google Meet and said they couldn't figure it out, and we looked at it, and here it says 3x minus 24 is the inverse. Well, if you look at the graph, they have it as the y-intercept is negative 12. So, that's nonsense. So I don't know. Big Ideas messed that up, I guess. If you want to send an email to Big Ideas and tell them that they're wrong, maybe they'll send you a nice email back. So, but that one's wrong. So that's why, if you were getting that one wrong, why you couldn't get the right answer, because they were wrong themselves. And then this one, was tough because you can't even graph this the way that it looks here. So if that ever happens to you again on a computer, you have to graph, and there's no y-intercepts that are the same. Just think of x values that you could use that would wind up giving you integers as your points. So for instance, if you use 1 as your x, you would get negative 3/2 plus 7/2, which would be negative 4. I'm sorry, which would be 4 over 2, which is 2. So 1, 2 would be a point. So you know that, and then you just you can go down 3 and write 2 from that point. So for instance, like we just said, we know that if we plug in 1, we would get 2. And then since the slope is negative 3 for the y and 2 for the x, well, you can go down 3. Another point would be negative 1 for the y and up 2 for the x, which would make that 3. So 3, negative 1 would be another point. And then, to graph the inverse, you could just flip these and then graph that. All right. So if you have any more questions on these from the assignment on 513, please let me know. Either email me or come to an open meet or write your question on the Google Doc. All right. Good luck today.